Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Krishna.
Wow, that was wonderful.
Yeah.
I want to give you a big hug straight away.
Haribol. Bangladesh, right?
Yeah.
It was first, was it on the left shoulder, then on the right shoulder, then again on the left shoulder. I don't think they do that. The Bangladesh has changed a lot. The culture's changed. Change a lot means it's gone down a lot.
When was the last time you visited?
Must have been 2018, I guess. I've been going pretty regularly.
Okay.
I don't think I went last year. We didn't go last year, did we? No, 2018 must have been the last time. It's changed a lot in many ways.
Yeah.
From listening to your series of talks, there are many, many things I learned. Very interesting.
Right.
I'm going to get around to Bangladesh there.
Yeah.
One thing for sure, whatever we may like or not like about the Hare Krishna movement, we sure didn't lead dull lives.
No.
It wasn't your stereotype kind of life. I remember once I was traveling, I think I was going to Gatwick Airport, and I was going through the suburbs of South London from Victoria. That's through South London where you're from. And I saw all these big posh houses, houses with the yachts outside and everything. And I thought, thank you, Prabhupada, for having saved me from that. I would have ended up in some suburb. And so anyway, another thing I wanted to say is that Krishna's the supreme orchestrator of everything. If you had stayed in Bangladesh, it would have made a big difference because there were only a few of us there at the time. And everyone had a big part to play. And Chanurari also, if he'd have stayed, if you'd have stayed, he'd probably have stayed also. But anyway,
it's more complicated than that.
Okay.
If you want to talk about why things actually happen, do you want to be? I don't know how far deeply do you want to go into? Because we can just say, oh, we left, or we can say why things happen.
Well, you did say that you were very disappointed, and Prabhu Vishnu Swami didn't give you the ticket.
It's two different things. You see, when I joined the party from Amsterdam because Prabhu Vishnu had come with Ravi. It was specifically Ravi. He lured me. He said, I was listening to classical Indian music, and he says, wow, in Bangladesh they have raga kirtans.
I'll just interrupt one thing now. I'll just interrupt one thing here now. I remember once you didn't say that you spent some time in Mayapur with the academy there. But anyway, I'm just going to say that because I remember once, I think it must have been in Mayapur, you told me that you were disappointed when you learned that actually the Bangladesh kirtan, it's not classical. And you kind of graded it down in your mind, something like that. Anyway, go on.
No, we'll get to all of that because I was on a journey. Yeah. I was on a journey. We all have our journey. My journey as a devotee was a process of gradually, joining. I joined very young when I joined. I was like, I went straight from school. So I joined full on, poverty, chastity, obedience, you do what you have to do, Sankirtan. But while that was going on, things were developing. Things seem like errors when they're just kind of like a couple of years. And so I started getting involved with listening. Reading Chaitanya Charitamrita was very important. Hearing Achyutananda Swami's tapes, hearing the sound of the tambura, hearing the authentic chants, oh, hey, Vaishnava Thakur, all those tunes, they gave a different type of feeling than the Western tunes that we were all kind of singing. And nobody could imitate what Prabhupada sang. He had a unique. So I suddenly...
the tambura, right? Go on anyway. I shouldn't
and also
his
very idiosyncratic tunes that Prabhupada
Right, the way he played the harmonium was just amazing, huh?
I mean, not only that, you never hear anywhere in Gaudiya Math or anywhere those tunes that Prabhupada sang. They hear his, he comes from the Subhana Malik family, and they obviously had their kirtan tradition that he picked up tunes from various, it's very big, the Chaitanya tree. I went on I was an artist and a musician, and it just so happened that I was interested in the roots culture. I started to become more interested. So when Ravi said Raga Kirtan, I was very neophyte in my journey and exploration of Indian aesthetics. Raga for me was the melodic structure, basically, and then the kirtan. So when I got to Bangladesh after the big journey during the revolution, where you heard, Chanarari was there. The first night we arrived, he'd just gone to a Nam Kirtan in Narayanganj and came back late in the evening. I was going, Haribol, Chanarari, I've come all the way. And he took me to a side and he said, Mathura, I can't stand. I don't want to say the devotee's name, but we know who he was. They'd been clashing. There'd only been 2 of them there the whole time in Bangladesh. And it wasn't going. And so I was so disappointed. I'd come to travel with Chanarari. And
but
he said,
could
I
have just gone out on
leave.
the road. He could have just gone out on the road. And anyway, go on.
Anyway, yeah. So there's all the ifs, buts, and maybes, but I'm going to explain to you the whys, why things happen, because the whole story of Krishna consciousness is, and the movement is, oh, if only, if that.
Yeah, really. That you put your finger on the button.
Oh, but what we can do is in this discussion, maybe we can go.
I think we can be here for a few years.
So there's a lot of things.
You're a very interesting person, Mathura.
Thank you. Well, so are you. You're intriguing, and that's what I want to discover in this talk.
And we're very, very different people. So you know, it's good we hug to start off with.
It's good. I'm actually very honored, just the fact that we're talking and the fact that you've gone through the trouble to listen to those talks that I made.
I didn't think it was trouble. It was very entertaining and very educational, because
thank you.
I tell you why, because like I say, you're very different to me, and I have what you could call a very straight and narrow approach to Krishna consciousness. But Prabhupada wanted to make Krishna consciousness available to the whole world, and everyone's not going to be like me, right? And one thing that really...
Yes, go on, carry on.
One thing that really struck me is that a lot of artistically minded people come to Krishna consciousness, and we really don't have much use for them, right?
Well, they don't know what to do with them. What do we do with these people?
Yeah, and another thing is then Prabhupada's Varnashram mission was for including all kinds of people. Anyway, go on.
No, it's.
I will interrupt you from time to time, as you've already understood.
No problem. And that phrase that you use, and I really like the way that you defined you. You are a kind of the epitome of the straight and narrow, I would say. Okay, and I am most probably an example of the zigzag, weird person.
But you're there, right?
Yeah,
you're there. And we
can't
I don't
know where I am. I don't know where I am. I'm somehow here.
You're with Prabhupada, not in the straight and narrow way that I am. Prabhupada's been there in your life, all your life. And you are not useful to ISKCON. but that's what, there are thousands of devotees like you. And we ignore you and overlook you at the expense of the whole of Prabhupada's mission. Anyway, go on.
Well, so the reason I brought up the anecdote with Chanarari, my dear friend, who'd been in Bangladesh and then left, and then you said, what if? But then the next thing was, I was only in Bangladesh for a few months. You know, we came overland to India. I'd just like to say, because people who might be watching this, I'll just say that during lockdown, in this April and May, I did 26 talks about my life, and I put them up on Facebook. And Maharaj heard something that I'd spoken and written about Prabhupada's disappearance, and we've reconnected through this way. And rather than sending you my manuscript, I sent you to the link to my talks that I just gave. And this is when we talk, if you talk about these talks, it's just so that people understand what we're talking.
Right, putting it in context.
I've got a page called Between Worlds, which is the name of my book, and it really epitomizes me. I'm in this strange reality between East and West, and not only that, generations, because I feel like I'm a link in a generational cult, and also between matter and spirit, being Tatashta Shakti. So it represents many things. I am between worlds, you see.
Really,
My world, my reality has been a fluctuation between India, Bangladesh, and the West. Many friends like you, and I've got other friends like Jagannath Mishra, they spent years, 10 years in a row in Orissa, and I didn't do that. I think the longest is in a stretch, 20 months. You know, so I'm not as, my continuity with India is fragmented. It's backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards, and backwards and forwards. And can you still hear me? Sound is okay?
Yeah. There was a little glitch, but it's gone now.
So when I was in Bangladesh, if you've heard my story, it was incredible. Basically, it went from a confrontation with the new order, the gurus, Bhagavan in Amsterdam, which led to kind of like him wanting to kind of get rid of me, but not know what to
I'm going to interrupt you now again. I hope you can get back to your thread. One thing about Bhagavan, which I think you can appreciate much more than me, he was the only one up there in the big high leadership who actually had a very good aesthetic, artistic appreciation, and was willing to back it up also in music and architecture and art and everything. He was a very, very sophisticated in that way. Please go on.
Well, exactly. But my little story with ISKCON is because he was my G. We were very close. I actually did, and Surabi and him both knew I had artistic talent. They both appreciated me. And I did Bhagavan's rooms and all of this thing. But we came into a confrontation about stuff in Amsterdam. And I've discussed that. And that led to me, that was the kind of, okay, Ravi was luring me, come on this journey overland, we're going overland. And this was the reason to go, was because of the confrontation. So I went, confrontation.
Oh, yeah.
So overland, that propelled
going now.
So I went from, within a few months, winter of 78, confrontation. Remember, Prabhupada had only left in 77. They'd only just become gurus in the beginning of 78. So it's all very compressed. I'm confronting right at the beginning of the guru regime, the system and things and the personality. I was becoming a threat to the establishment in Amsterdam. Okay, so I go on this journey with all the maverick devotees who are joining Prabhu Vishnu's party.
Prabhu Vishnu's pirates, they used to call them, or us.
And so we had this fantastic journey that wasn't just the journey, but it involved going through Iran during the revolution. We all entered in Iran the day the Ayatollah Khomeini arrived back on January the 19th, 1979. And so we went through all that, got to India, and one van went up to Nepal, another one two stayed in India, and one was for Bangladesh, one of these vans that we took up. That's how I came to Bangladesh. You weren't there at that time.
Right, I didn't come till after Gaur Purnima 79.
Exactly. So what happened was we got there quite early. I went with Prabhu Vishnu, and I think Ravi drove the van there, okay, with some books. I flew and we met, and that's when I met Chanarari that evening, and he said, I don't want to be there. And then we traveled down to Chittagong, basically, and that was my first experience really of Bangladesh. We traveled after a couple of days. Chanarari didn't come. It was with Vyasaki, Prabhu Vishnu, me, and Ravi. And we went to some little villages nearby, and that's where my mind got blown for the first time.
Gopendra, was it Gopendra?
It could have been. He was a
gentleman who spoke very good English, which is unusual in Bangladesh at that time. He had a place. He had a place he wanted to give to ISKCON. It was actually quite close to Pundarik Dham, but it's on the other side of the road. I think it must be Gopendra Babu.
I think it sounds familiar, yeah. And it was it was just everything about it, you know, the Bangladeshi, the pakor, the pond, the coming out, them seeing us first of all in Kami clothes, and then we would change into our dhotis and tilak, and everyone would look at you. And I explained it. I called it the mutual mind-blowing thing. And they would be looking at us going, oh, these foreigners, they come from London, you know, and they putting on the tilak. And then we're looking at them going, my God, this is my spiritual family for generations, you know, and we're all looking at each other. It's very emotional. And then when you're sitting in the courtyard of the village in the evening, and all these venerable Vaishnavas, not professionals, the locals, they're singing all these Narottam Das and Govinda Das bhajans.
Really.
And it was, and also we also went to Shitakund, and we were all a bit disappointed because it's a Shakti Tirtha, and we saw all these buffaloes being led off for slaughter. We're all a little bit, we don't want to hang out here. So I saw two sides of Bengali Hinduism, Vaishnava, and you know that part, because it's very mixed in Bengal.
Yeah,
and so
Vaishnavas and Shaktas. Yeah.
So we just spent a few weeks there, and then we went back to Mayapur for the festival. Okay, and then we came back again, and then when I came back again, I came with Rasika overland. Okay, and I don't know if you flew or I don't think you were in our thing. Mahakratu became part of the team, and I think I'm not sure when you came.
No, I think I must have been there, but I don't remember. I do remember the first time I went to Bangladesh was in a vehicle, and Mahakratu was there, and or maybe Mahakratu. Yeah, Mahakratu was there, and Rasik was there. And we went in, and then we went down to Jeshore to the Chiranaboy Gram, the 96 villages, which are all Hindu.
There's millions of people around the world going through Zoom scenarios like we are. Even people who are professionals, I've seen all these programs, and people are bending forward, adjusting things.
Okay, I got you. Okay. Well, anyway, I could talk.
I think
many things, but I'm not. I don't remember going with you, but I do remember the first time I went to Bangladesh. We went in Kami clothes. We went to But you know, one thing is memories are very unreliable, and you mix things up in your mind. And
yes.
I did interviews for about Bhaktisiddhanta book, and Rancho told me. He did so many interviews, and it's how people get things mixed up, and things they've heard, and things their prejudices and all kinds of things come in. Memories are very unreliable, actually. Anyway, go on.
Well, however
I could talk for hours about Bangladesh.
I was definitely on a vehicle going with Rasika to Bangladesh at that time, okay, which was after the festival.
Oh, I was too.
Yeah, I think we may have been together. There was a very wonderful scene at the border. It was one of these classic things where we came to the border, and the man was so on the Bangladeshi side, not the Indian side, but the Bangladeshi side of Haridaspur or Benapol. I don't know if you can remember, if you were there. We started chatting, and we had all those books and everything smuggled in the you know, and he obviously didn't see it. And when he came to stamp the passport,
oh right, you told me, yeah. And you told me means in your
he actually went like this. He got the sweat off his brow, and he flicked it into the thing to make it moist. And while he did, he said, "Excuse me, sir, we are a very poor country." One
thing I noticed, everyone noticed. When you go across the border from Bangladesh to India, what a difference. The people are so much nicer.
Very humble, very.
On the Bangladesh side, how they treat you is so much different to on the India side. And usually on the India side, it's Hindus and it's Muslims on the Bangladesh side.
And since you've been going back in 2018 and stuff recently, has it still kept like that? Still very, very
well, it's very, very different now. Bangladesh is very different. We went, there was the military rule was going on when we first went to Bangladesh. Although you wouldn't have guessed it in the villages, because they never saw it, they had no relationship with the government or anything. I mean, they were just in their own world. But Bangladesh's economy has developed tremendously. Everyone has a phone, and they're connected by internet to the world.
Yeah.
So it's very modern in many ways, but not that modern. And ISKCON has become very much established. I would say ISKCON has had a tremendous influence on the Hindu culture there. I'll give you an example of how much it's established. I just saw something about a week ago. There was some Islamic extremist. And he had some manifesto in Bangladesh. And there are a few points, and one of them was to close down ISKCON. So you can see what an influence it's had.
Yeah, I can
but
imagine.
it's very well respected among Muslims and Hindus, as I can see. We have so many centers, so many initiated devotees, and it's really become a big thing. It's a huge thing. If you take the Hindu population, then per capita, we've made more devotees than any other country in the world, and it's had a tremendous influence. I think maybe it was 2018 or 2017, and I was in Narasindhi. Do you remember Narasindhi? There's a group of villages near Dhaka. Narasindhi, Narasindhi, Gopaldi, Madhavdi, they're all the names of Krishna.
I don't remember.
Anyway, Narasindhi is a town. And I said, when I first came here about how many years ago, I don't remember. I said I couldn't find a single vegetarian in the whole town. And now I said there are hundreds and hundreds, shota. And one Bengali boy said next to me, he corrected me, he said hajar, which means thousands and thousands. So it's really had a lot of influence. And even the whole culture, maybe the original culture is somewhat lost, has been eclipsed to some extent by the more ISKCON-ish kind of culture.
Yeah, it's possible. It's possible because a lot of the people, the original Vaishnavas, they left. And I discovered that most of those lots of the Nam-Kirtan groups that you see in West Bengal and Navadweep are actually all Bangladeshis.
Oh, yeah.
They're all Bangladeshis who've come over. That but the big kind of popular Nam-Kirtan was more popular in East Bengal.
Well, the thing is that the Kirtan culture, the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's culture was big in East Bengal.
Yeah.
And then in Mednipur, which was bordering with Orissa due to the influence of the Shamanandis, and in the Sundarban on both sides of the border. Yeah. In the south, in the jungle area. Yeah. And then a lot of West Bengal was very much Shakta. There are pockets of Vaishnavas everywhere, like in Srikhanda. But now, because so many Bangladeshis have come, there are many in North Bengal, that's north of the Ganga. There are many Bangladeshi Hindus who are there. So there are lots of Vaishnavas there also. So just very generally speaking, East Bengal was a lot more Vaishnava before the partition of India. And West Bengal was much more Shakta. Yeah. And I think that's got a lot to do with how the people are much nicer in East Bengal and they're much more materialistic in West Bengal, generally speaking. And why in West Bengal so many became communists. It's very complex. Why so many became communists.
The history is complex.
Yeah,
because even during the British time, before independence in 47, they tried to they did kind of
Bengal
separate.
Was divided,
Yeah, and that created a big freak out because I've got good friends in Calcutta, and it was their grandparents that at that time they could see the writing on the wall, you see. So they started moving. Even at that time, the percentage of Hindus in East Bengal was much bigger. Then after that time, they started moving over over. Right. Like that, my friend is Gopal Banerjee. He's the nephew of Chobi Bandyopadhyay, the famous Kirtanier.
Oh.
And they live in Lake Market.
Did you meet her? Oh, you did, yeah. Chubby.
Yeah, I know her very, very. And Gopal's my best friend. She was a yogini, used to live in his father's family house, so I know them all. But the story, he's told me the whole story. Their house in South Calcutta. Subhash Chandra Bose and all these famous people used to know their family and come there. And it was all before, near Lake where the Rabindra Sarovar is in near Kalighat and all that. That was all developed during, from the middle of the 20th century, basically later on, and then gradually more and more and more and more of those.
And they're still coming, and there are many Muslims coming also. Maybe because India is doing better economically than Bangladesh. It's still going on. Huge Muslim migration
let's
to
get back.
Assam. Yeah, okay, go on.
Well, to get back to this, still answering your question, like, oh, if only you'd stayed. Well, the reason is there's, first of all, Chanarari left, and then on that, when I came back to Bangladesh after the festival, I went on a tour with Rasika and Mahakratu, just us three, and that's the thing that I've described in my talk.
Right.
That
You
was
went to
really,
Rajsai, yeah.
Yeah, Rajsahi, and we met Nikunja Bihari and all of these amazing Vaishnavas. It was just like, so I went through confrontation in Amsterdam, overland adventure, to suddenly into basically, that's, there's nowhere on the planet where Gaudiya Vaishnava indigenous culture is in its most pristine state. So I'm already in England, in Amsterdam, I've started an interest in the roots culture, the kirtan and everything. And then suddenly I'm there. I'm in a place which could be just out of Chaitanya Charitamrita.
Exactly. I had that experience so many times, because in the villages, at that time, there's no electricity.
Exactly.
Some people might have a battery operated transistor radio, the richest person in the town. And and what do people do? There's nothing to do after dark. There's no TV, there's no computer. They sit and do kirtan.
Yeah.
And and you could just imagine coming in the rice fields in the background, there's the coconut trees and the palm trees and the palm tree. You can just imagine Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan party. Often it did. The Sankirtan party would come from another village to meet us Param Vaishnavas. It was amazing. It was really something.
And to wake up in the morning in one of those houses, generally you would always be given very good hospitality.
It was embarrassing. It was embarrassing, wasn't it? You have these old gentlemen,
yes,
and they're treating us like really something very special and very respectful. It was very embarrassing. And Rasik, one time he got stuck in the rainy season. This is after you left, of course. His vehicle got stuck in a rainy season in some village in North Bengal on the eastern side, Rajsai, Pabna, somewhere up that way. He was stuck there with his whole party throughout the whole just at the beginning of the rainy season. Their vehicle got stuck in the mud, and they couldn't move it out of the mud, and they had to get some spare part, and Prabhu Swami had to bring it from Europe, and he wasn't coming back. They were stuck in one village for months.
Wow.
And they hosted them happily for months.
Amazing, yeah.
Amazing.
I know.
A whole party.
I mean, it's if I when people say, hey, they were the best years of my life, whatever, I would say, just because you spent much more time in Bangladesh.
But it was tough. I tell you, it was tough in many ways also. Anyway, go on.
Well, I'll just conclude. The reason, what happened was, while we were in fact, Rajsahi, we went to stay with Nikunja Bihari's sister. Now, I mentioned there, I suddenly started to feel ill, and I arrived back in Dhaka after kind of getting weaker and weaker, and that's when you were there.
I remember seeing you there, yeah.
But then you all went off for a week. Everybody went off. And I was stuck there in May with the, load shedding, the power going and the heat. But then there was this silver lining, because suddenly I had gone through this village, gone through the villages, had the kirtan, had the sangha, and there I read Brihad Bhagavatamritam and Jaiva Dharma all by myself. And it was the first time since reading Chaitanya Charitamrita about 3 years ago where I dived back into the... it's very proactive being an ISKCON devotee. You're out there doing things, doing this, and is preaching and doing this. And I'm a kind of quite physical guy. And I'd neglected my inner, once I read Chaitanya Charitamrita, I didn't kind of study it. I just kind of read it, went, wow, got zapped. And then I never really read regularly, or I have to admit, all Prabhupada's books. We would have lectures. Suddenly I'm by myself. And I had Vyasaki's amazing recordings that he had made of Nityananda Sampradaya and all those. And I was listening to those and reading, and actually experiencing some of the highest bliss I'd experienced for years.
You had jaundice.
Yeah, and it allowed me to tap into. There was parts where I was reading, the Briha Bhagavatamritam. I literally had to kind of close the book because it was like shining out of the book. I was just going. It took me by surprise, and it was almost like Krishna saying, "Look, you might think sometimes you've forgotten me or Krishna, but it's everything's there. You just have to knock, and it's just all there." And that's what it was like. I just opened. It's like, oh, it's all here again. Woo! Here I go, and I went off into this world. And so the two things, what happened to me was I was losing faith in ISKCON as an institution, but regaining faith with Gaudiya culture.
Jai.
And
that's required.
Yes.
I mean, there may be so many devotees who lose faith in ISKCON, and I don't blame them. I mean,
yeah.
Hare Krishna. Well, I obviously
anyway, that's what happened.
But Krishna is there, and Krishna's with us.
Exactly.
Krishna is real.
Yeah. And different people have. For me, there's the whole kind of ISKCON Hare Krishna West, project from Hridayananda. But I've always been, like I told you, hearing Chaitanya Charitamrita and reading, hearing the Tambura, I liked Indian culture more than the Western kind of like what we were trying to do. And I wanted to get involved in the roots thing. I wanted to hang out with traditional Gaudiya Vaishnavas. I wanted to know what it was. So I actually got my Shraddha for Gauranga and Gaudiya culture and literature at the taste of of what actually Vaishnavism is about, Harikatha, through this journey, which only took place. You have to understand, when I came to Bangladesh, we arrived in about February. Then we went back to ISKCON, and then we, for the festival. Then I came back to Bangladesh, traveled, and I actually left in June. I was actually only in Bangladesh for it seems like a whole period, but I was only there. And why did I leave? Okay, I was really ill and sick, and I have to thank you from the bottom of my heart. You went into the kitchen and you were getting rashes from the heat, but you cooked this special kind of food. You mostly can't remember, but you cooked.
I don't remember, no.
But
I do remember. I think I had jaundice before that, maybe before or after, and I knew I had hepatitis B actually. And I know what you need to do to get healthy, and the diet is very important.
Yeah. And so you cooked some special kind of food that I could eat at that time as well. So that was going on there. But I was so weak, my eyes were getting yellow, and Prabhu Vishnu, I spoke to Prabhu Vishnu and I said, can I just go up? If people who don't know who we're talking about, Prabhu Vishnu was a Swami from England.
I think whoever tunes into this will probably know.
Okay. Anyway, so he was in charge, and he was our kind of boss under Jai Pataka, who was the GBC, if you're talking about ISKCON hierarchy. And I had a reasonably good relationship with him, but we really only kind of got to meet really on the overland journey. We weren't really close friends. I wasn't close with him in England because I was in Amsterdam, in the Amsterdam Yatra. And in India, we were kind of connected vaguely through the library party because he had been connected with it. But all I wanted to do was come back to Bangladesh when I was healthy, because I was getting really, really weak and really sick, and it was the hot summer. And all I wanted to do was to go to Kathmandu, to a cool climate, because I'd gone there just before Prabhupada, and I knew the difference. And there was a nice, Mahavishnu was there was a little temple. And
Falgun was there.
I don't know
Pitamba was there.
Yeah.
Maybe he wasn't there at the time. Anyway, go on.
But the thing was...
Sudeshna, Sanatan, go on.
I'd given up everything. I consider myself like a pretty capable devotee, and I'd come overland to join this party to come to Bangladesh, and we were very successful on that tour, me, Mahakratu. And then suddenly I get this response, because all I've known up to this time, really, in my ISKCON experiences, being in Europe, in Amsterdam, Bhagavan, my GBC, and then in India a little bit with the library party. Gargamuni had a little bit of connection, fading out in terms of ISKCON projects. And here I was suddenly there in Bangladesh, ready to give my life, and Prabhu Vishnu just couldn't even be bothered to pay my airfare and say, yeah, we'll look after you. The lack of value, that I was valued so little that he couldn't be bothered after all that. I became almost instantly, I just thought, I don't want to go, but that's what I felt. So immediately I tried to get repatriated by the government, but I was too honest. I told them I had jaundice, and they were all a bit paranoid about putting me on a plane. So what I did is my good old mum come to the rescue, because this is a big part of my story post ISKCON, is my family, where I came from, you know.
Right.
So my mother, who I'd only seen once or all these periods, a couple of times since becoming a devotee, I called her up, and literally within hours I had a ticket arranged, you know, and I was on a plane and I left Bangladesh. That was it. That's why I left. Otherwise, I could have gone up to Kathmandu, spent a couple of months recuperating, and been down again and been with all of you guys and been part of the whole project. But it wasn't to be, you see. So my journey in life, always, even if you heard my earlier story before joining, headmaster confrontation, and GBC gurus confrontation. I could go on in a few other things further on in my life where I'm going along doing my thing, and then the system, whatever system it is, or authorities that control the reality, they go, we don't like the way that you are. You know, it's, and especially being from the 60s, I don't know if you used to watch The Prisoner with Patrick McGoohan.
I very much remember it. The bicycle, right, with two wheels. Yeah.
But it's the whole thing is, I am not a number. I am a free man. You are number 6. What? Who are you? You are number 6. So it's, you know, these are all classic things.
I remember that.
So I was, my life has been like that. I don't plan it. I compromise and I get along with authorities. But then if I'm squashed, I go, wait a minute. You know, you're treading on my toes, me, you know. And not everybody has that sense of strong individuality, but I have. I've had that, you know. So that's been my guiding force, you see. And then I went back to Europe and I stayed with my mother for 1 month. But then it was because you talked about Bhagavan. See, Bhagavan, I spoke to him on the phone, and he said, come over to France, speak to me. You know, because I was planning to go back to Bangladesh, and he made see what happened was, after I had the confrontation in Amsterdam, which led to me, when we came back to Mayapur, just, you know, after going
right. I saw your video series.
Yeah.
So I'm tuned in, but you can go on anyway.
I'll just repeat it briefly for the other people to know what my story was. So to give credit where credit is due, even though we fell out in Amsterdam, Bhagavan still respected me as an individual. And so he actually apologized to me for the way that he dealt with. I mean, literally, I was waiting outside his room, not wanting to go in, and Chanarari was there, and Bhagavan says, where's Mathura? And I said, I'm out. He's out there. And he says, why is he not coming in? And Chanarari said, he's got issues with you from Amsterdam. And then I heard Bhagavan being, you know, going, Mathura, come in. So I went into the room, and he offered his obeisances and said, and apologized and said sorry. And I went, wow. So immediately, then see, he respected my taste and who I was. And even though I might have been a thorn in his side in Amsterdam, in his regime, still he knew that I had value in terms of art and all of these things.
He trusted you. He trusted you. He sent you off to India with, you know, you can sanction thousands of dollars of worth of purchases and all kinds of things.
Yeah.
But trusted your taste and your financial integrity.
Yeah, basically. You know, and now, you know, everywhere you see the artwork of B.G. Sharma and everywhere. But
you popularized him too.
It was me that actually went there and went on my own. This was, nobody told me in ISKCON, you should do this. I went to Nathadwar with Chanarari. I met Narottam Narayan, who was the artist that did all these fantastic Bridge Bussy pictures of Muli Manohar and all of those. I actually met him because when I joined in Amsterdam in 73 in the Heringgracht, we had posters on the wall in the temple. This is when I first joined. And the posters that did it for me were not the ISKCON posters. They were these Bridge Bussy prints. And I used to sit in front of the that picture of Murli Manohar, and it had it signed in the bottom, Narottam Narayan, Nai Hawali, Nathadwai. I had no idea who he was, where that was.
You probably didn't even know Narottam Narayan was a name.
No.
Or what? You have no idea what it means. Nothing.
No, I was looking, and then there was another picture, which was Nanda Kumar. And that's where I had one of my first, we just read Nectar of Devotion with Tulsi Das about the different moons on Krishna's body. I think is there 21 moons? I think there's 21 moons. They're all on the different.
I should know, but I don't. It's something and a half.
Yes, yes, yeah. I remember that it really turned me on. I'm a very new devotee. And then the Nanda Kumar picture was kind of airbrush style. It wasn't Narottam, it was by Indra Sharma. Okay.
I did meet him once.
In Bombay.
Yeah,
in
right.
Bombay.
Yeah.
Very humble man, incredibly
He must
humble.
have passed away by now.
Oh, yeah. They were all from Nathadwar. They're all Pushti Margis, and they moved to Bombay, B.G. Sharma and him. But so that's where my journey, so I went to Nathadwar, but on my first visit, I didn't meet B.G. Sharma. I went on another visit afterwards with, and that visit, I went to Udaipur. Vimukta Sangha went up to Rishikesh to find Malati, and I went off on a train. And that was the first time in my whole journey of Krishna consciousness where I was suddenly by myself on a train with nobody. And to tell you the truth, I loved it. All this time,
the rugged individual. You have to be rugged in India.
Well, it was just basically, it's this whole journey about, you're part of a movement, an organization, and it's hard to see yourself as an individual because you're part of this thing. And then all of a sudden you're just there, you, without waving a banner, and people are reacting very nice. I'm getting on with everybody. Everybody's like, I'm having great conversations, I'm talking, and I'm beginning to realize that I'm okay by myself. I'm actually okay. It's all about developing the confidence and the belief in myself as an individual. And then I just kind of knocked on B.G. Sharma's door and said, "Hi, I'm Mathura Das." I was like you, saffron, shaved head. I had a really clean shaven head, Tila. And I went in and I was just so enthusiastic, and we made really good connections. So I was the one that turned Surabi onto it. Surabi turned, Tripurari and all the Yogeshwara and all the different people. I did all this. I didn't even know why I was doing it. I just had to go there and do it. I was trying to put this jigsaw puzzle together. Okay, we've joined this Hare Krishna movement. It's gone through a whole process. It's come to the West. Prabhupada's brought it to us. It's developing. But where did it come from? What are all the influences? And because I'm into art and music, therefore, I started getting involved with the art of music and trying to put those pictures, and then later on, I met the Banerjee art, S. Banerjee, who's dead, who passed away. But what I wanted to say was I started this whole journey with art out of my own back. It wasn't a project I wasn't given it. And that's the reason I had my actual confrontation later with Bhavananda and those people and his gang. That's why he shouted at me, "What are you doing? Who told you to do this?" And I said, "Nobody." I said, "That's your problem." And this was it. This was me facing the institution. They had absolutely no interest in the fact that I was interested, a sensitive, artistic person who was actually interested in Bengali Gaudiya culture. I was into art. Those bit Bhagavan did. Bhagavan respected it, but not the others. They just wanted people to just be robots, really. Yes, men.
I actually heard the town president in Calcutta at the time, a little around that time, saying that why don't just people do whatever they say? And I can't. We need some robots.
Yes. Yeah, that's what they want. Look, they couldn't be so explicit until they became gurus, and then they started. It was a kind of a free reign to have their absolute power, and then it was, it's like what. But you see, when being mature many years later, looking at the history of religion and culture, what's new?
Yeah,
basically. It's almost, it's like as a mature person, you look back, and even because I'm going to ask you some questions as well, because you're more of an expert than me on the Gaudiya Math. While I was writing my book, my manuscript, those talks are based on, the reason I was able to give quite a lot of detail is because I'd written it. I spent 5 years in Missouri writing it all down in a slightly different format. So I've actually had to go through my life in detail. So even though I finished between 2006 and 2012, 6 years in them, I wrote all of my, and I thought a lot about everything. Why are things the way they are? Why did that happen? The historical processes. And I'm very interested, and I'm interested to hear your feedback on it. I mean, I've discussed a bit, because I'm fascinated by the link between Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, the mission, the institution, how it's gone on its format, because there are going to be some questions that I'm intrigued, to talk to you about. Because there's a word that kept coming up in my mind about, and it's the word inevitable. Okay, because we've got the famous verses, from Bhaktisiddhanta, religions are the dikes and dams that stop the thingy, and that whole kind of series of, where he's actually castigating organized religion.
And he made an organized religion.
Exactly. So the word, it's like trying to see Google Earth and look at the, in terms of historical processes and the institution from a kind of detached view. You can see not only that, but
there's no detached view.
Okay.
I don't believe in it. I don't believe in it. That's a bit of philosophy, if you like, but I don't believe in it.
It's a metaphor rather than a literal thing, really. What I mean detached, it's kind of trying to look at it more, like I said, like a Google Earth thing, stand away, not as an academic, but as a participant, but to try and understand. Bhaktivinoda Thakur,
it's very, very hard. Winston Churchill, one of his famous sayings, that history will treat me kindly because I'm going to write it. They caught up with him now.
Yeah, trust Winston.
But it's just like when I was at school, I do remember a few things in that prison children's prison called school. I didn't like school. That we were taught British history, and it was all about fighting with Napoleon, and it was all presenting like Napoleon's a real idiot and he's really useless. In France, it'll be the same history and maybe the same facts, more or less, but a completely different take on it.
Exactly.
So I don't think there's really anything such as the idea of being completely objective, even in so-called science.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
It's true. It's true. But
go on anyway. I'm
just going to finish. I'm going to wind up because I've been talking all about me.
Well, you're a very interesting person.
Well, thank you. What I'm intrigued to know is from
you're a recipient of Prabhupada's mercy. Definitely.
I'm amazed because you're only one of few people that have actually gone through my talks. Quite a lot of people were watching when I gave it. They were going through it, and a couple of people have gone through them since. I'm in the process of. I'm very slow at it, of taking them all and putting them onto YouTube, but I haven't done it yet. So I'm going to put. They're going to be on YouTube as part of it as well. I kind of enjoyed what I did. I could have gone on. People wanted me to carry on, but I only got to the ISKCON story. It's because my life is just so complex. You talk about that story that I've shared is just the story up to the point of leaving ISKCON, with a little retrospective thing at the end about it. But actually in my book, I've gone into quite details, post-ISKCON, post-life. Psychedelics revisited, part of my zigzag path, which is not your straight and narrow path.
Psychedelics definitely not.
Now I've gone off on a very, very, very different path to you. But it's interesting, maybe for the talkers, just to recap who I am, why I. At one point we were all in the same boat together doing the same thing, and then for various reasons I went off this tangent, and you have done what you've done. What I'm intrigued to know from you, because I haven't followed your whole story, is just like I've kind of revealed in my talks what happened with me and my mindset and why I went off and why I left, basically because of who I was. And it's interesting because you said, oh, if only you'd stayed in Bangladesh, and and it's great. If only there hadn't been a guru system, if only Bhavananda hadn't been a twat, if only, if everybody had been friendly and nice and actually really, but it wasn't. Okay. And I don't want to dwell on that too much. I think I'm interested.
Like you say, history repeats itself and this and that. The 11 gurus, they were actually Prabhupada's best men, actually, in many ways.
Yeah.
So we were.
Well, I don't know. When you say best men, that's also a bit of a. Because when we use the word best, we could say they were
okay. All right. No, definitely. Yeah. Well, in the sense that he was the ones he appointed as Ritviks or.
GBCs. He made GBCs.
Anyway,
yes.
but
I want to know from
what I think they were all sincere to serve Prabhupada very much, but all of a sudden it's just like you learn to drive a car, you're driving it at 30 miles an hour, all of a sudden you're put on a race course, you're going to crash. I think that's something what happened there. They just weren't ready. They weren't ready for it.
Partly.
Yeah. Anyway.
We don't need to go down that avenue.
Yeah.
What I'm intrigued to know about your good self is that through reading, do you have any more questions or points that you want to bring up? First to me about
so many things, just talking now, so many things come up, but I didn't make notes and I don't remember, but many things. One thing I wanted to say. You talking about Nikunja Bihari. There was another very well-known Nikunja Bihari Goswami in Shillette. I don't know if you met him. I'm sure Chanarari must have met him because he was up in Shillette.
Yes.
You didn't meet him. He was a very big man up there.
Okay.
And he arranged our programs and everything. But I'm just thinking that on one hand, these devotees in Bangladesh, like Narota, what was his name? Nikunja Bihari in Rajsai. On one hand, they've exceptional Vaishnava qualities. On the other hand, they're quite naive also because they just presumed that we're Param Vaishnavas, I guess because we gave up, from their point of view, we gave up all the material comforts and everything. But were we Param Vaishnavas?
No.
We had a lot of we had a lot of struggles with our own trying to understand what Krishna consciousness is and live this life. So in some sense, it's very naive also, and you could say sentimental also. And people who are, it's what would you call it? Paradox, that people who are faithful by nature and simple and religiously inclined and good-hearted, they can often be very easily misled also.
Yeah, but to speak up, I've thought a lot about the naivety and the inexperience.
And our own naivety also.
The thing is,
also very naive.
I have also Bangladeshi Vaishnava friends here in England. You know, Himanshu Goswami and and I've known him since when he first, because Chanarari met him in Shillette in the early days, and they've come to the West. And I've gone and met the Bangladeshi community in the East End of London.
The Hindus,
people like
a lot of
all Vaishnavas, Shitarani Roy, and I've gone to their Pragati Shodon. They have their, but it's not even West Bengal, it's Bangladeshi. You know, they have kirtan and everything. And I've talked to them, and Shitarani Roy, she said to me, "You have to understand Mathura. You have come to Krishna through your devotion and humility. We are just born into this."
That's her devotion and humility.
Yes, so they are seeing, and I have to give, we are who we are, and also that, it makes sweeping.
You know what, Mathura? You were there.
Yes, before.
You're into Indian culture, but you're so British.
Yes.
With your mustache and everything, you could just put a British Army uniform from the 19th century on you, and you'd be an officer in the army. And you're so British. You're so British.
But You know, when you hear about the gopis and the residents of Braj, their innocence and naivety, they
Yeah.
literally dropped everything and went off to Krishna. In a similar way, in a similar vein, similar, not the same, but a similar, we were naive and we just dropped whatever we were doing and joined Hare Krishna. And that's what kind of the love affair between Prabhupada and his disciples was, this mutual love affair. We fell in love with Prabhupada, but Prabhupada was like amazed that, you know, people were doing what he asked them to do. You know, people gave up everything. You know, it is, despite the naivety and whatever, there was an innocence and a purity amongst us all. You know, the fact that we, and I think that's what they were seeing, you see. And the thing is this, you know, I described meeting Nikunja Bihari that first time we met and we came to his shop. Literally, he didn't know who we were. We were like kami clothes, and he had Rasika presented him a book, and he was like, you know, and then he just saw this picture on the back, and he kind of looked at the book, looked at us, and he just went, Mayapur? Mayapur? I can't describe. If I do, I get emotional just describing him. He literally, from seeing a picture that just said Mayapur and seeing us, he just did dandavats in front of us without even thinking high, low, this or that. I mean,
spontaneous. Yeah.
So when I say that, you know, it was like walking into Chaitanya Charitamrita, these are the people, when you read Chaitanya and Vaishnavas, this is how they act. This is their mentality. They actually don't have ego. He didn't have this ego. I'm Nikunja Bihari Goswami. I'm 14th generation. I am so big and advanced. No, that's why those people that we met before we met Nikunja said, we know who you have to stay with because he is the one. And, you know, and when we went there, he just blew our minds. You know, if we went to bed at 1 o'clock in the morning or something, and you know, woke up, he would be out long before us. He'd be doing his japa. He had done his Tulsi Puja. He had the Tulsi. Everything about him was pure and innocent. And it's not that every Vaishnava I met was like that.
No,
you know?
we met bowels and all kinds of people.
And lots of them were kind of all showy and part of, you know, theatrical or whatever. But when you met these gems, and I have to say, because I only spent a little time, but I just feel totally blessed by a meeting. For me, bless his innocence and I mean, not only him, what's his name? The other Advaita Vamsa, he actually made a recording of me singing Tulsi Kirtan. There's me going there and wanting to hear traditional Narottam, and he was hearing me doing Tulsi. And devotees years later said, oh, you know, Mr. Goswami, I can't remember, Nikhil Goswami, he's still got your tape of doing Tulsi Puja and he plays it. And I'm like, oh my God, it was embarrassing, you know. But they somehow saw something in us, and we saw something in them, and that purity and naivety that that Nikunja Bihari had it's not common. It's not common, you know. It really is. You could say it's because it's not fake sentimentality, or it's just spontaneous, and it's just how you can't fake being a pure devotee.
Very good. Thank you for that clarification. Yeah.
That's me. That's my angle on that specific person. And and we met other types of Vaishnavas. It's like this Vaishnava, on the second time I go Nitai in the village, we kind of walked in and Nitai kind of grabbed me and he started doing all this, and he looked like the traditional kirtanier with the long hair.
Yeah, I know very well. Oily hair.
Yeah, and the looks, the sunken cheeks, the thing, and you can tell and that night in the village when we were doing the kirtan, because they cleared all the village, you know, we did while he was singing kirtan, the children were singing. They were like a choir that he'd trained, you know. There was a bit where he was singing and then he looked at us and then suddenly his whole voice cracked with emotion. And instead of like the professional kirtaniers, you know, like milking that and doing a whole bunch of theatrical, he was controlling his thing, you know, and the more he tried to control it, the more emotional, and I could hardly look at it because it was freaking me out. It was the emotion bursting out that was spontaneous, and it wasn't fake. He wasn't doing it for show. Whatever that emotion was, it was pure.
It wasn't
put
pure.
on.
It was a very
I've seen lots of
It was a very big thing, us coming to Bangladesh, because one time in Dhaka, we were quite new in Bangladesh at that time, and we'd been around the villages showing our movie of Hare Krishna around the world. And myself and Roshikda, we were talking with one young Bangladeshi Hindu social worker who spoke good English, which again wasn't that common in Bangladesh at the time. And we were having a mock argument, because he was saying, oh, so many Hindus are converting into Christians. And we're saying, well, what's the harm? What's the harm? You see, the Hindus, they eat fish and everything, and the Christians, what's the harm? At least they'll go to the church once a week. And then he said, well, at least if they're Hindus, they'll be more inclined to chant the name of Gauranga. Then we accepted it. But one thing he said to us, that your movement, even though you've only been here a short time, but the news has spread throughout the country to all the Hindus by word of mouth.
Okay.
For generations, because one reason East Bengal split from West Bengal is due to the terrain, because once you get out to East Bengal, it's full of rivers, the huge rivers, and it was all very forested. It was never, West Bengal was very developed, and East Bengal, its economy was providing jute for the jute mills in Calcutta, but it would be sent by boat, and there were no roads, no bridges, hardly. It was very much cut off. Even at the time of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, from Chaitanya Bhagavat, that when he came back from East Bengal, he was making jokes about the East Bengali accent, even though he was from Sylhet. His forefathers are from Sylhet. So geographically, there was a big divide. And for years, people told us, this man told us, and so many people told us, for years, the Muslims have been saying that Hinduism is finished, the whole world is becoming Islamic, Muslim, you should also become Muslims. And not many did, even though it was difficult for them. But the Christians were making inroads. But they had a great feeling it's a very feeling culture, right? Gauriya Vaishnavism especially, and the Bengalis, the Gauriya Vaishnav culture is so much suitable, especially for the East Bengali Hindus, because they're a very feeling kind of people. It's like you have in Europe Italians, and then you have Germans. And if we go by the stereotypes, of course, Mussolini was also an Italian, but the stereotype is the Italian are very feeling kind of people, and their language is like that also. Whereas Germans, they're, at least if you go by the stereotype, and there's something in it, they're just at the opposite end of the pole.
More intellectual, more thinking.
And very ordered, and they like everything should be in order and like that. So what was I going to say? So the Bengali, they do have a feeling, definitely, for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, for Kirtan, for Radha, Krishna. It may have got perverted into some kind of sex cult. Vivekananda called Vaishnavism a sex cult, and this and that. There were perversions, but definitely there's a feeling there. And so this Hindu social worker told us that wherever we go, the tendency to Christian conversion is completely stopped. And even people are converting back. So it was a big, big thing. People like Nikunja Bihari and Rajshai, they'd heard of Mayapur, and there are Westerners taking to Krishna consciousness. Well, of course, they wouldn't call it Krishna consciousness. That's a neologism. And they'd heard about it, and it was like a very big thing. Western people, and they know Priti Vite Archecha. That's one thing when you go in the villages in Bengal at that time, at least, so many people that know so many more verses from Chaitanya Charitamrita than I probably know even now. And Chaitanya Bhagavat and Priti Vite Arche Jatonadi, everyone, it was well known, but it just seemed like some fantasy or something. It was a big, big thing that and there's such a high opinion of the British and the Americans. We're just, we're not civilized, and they're very advanced.
Yeah.
Very, very big thing. And they had the idea that we're all very rich. That was one thing. We're all coming from very rich backgrounds, and in comparison to them, we are. But it's not that we had money pouring out of our pockets, but our whole way of life was definitely more affluent than theirs. So it was a big, big thing. And I think that the fact that we've given up so much to take to this, that was a big thing, and it was a very big boost for the Bangladeshi Hindu consciousness. And I think, of course, there are many Indian gurus who went to the West, and people have come back to India, so many different groups. But I think ISKCON in India has made an impression in a way that other groups haven't, in as much as they know we follow rules strictly. We're serious about it. And mostly, and we have philosophy. I don't know if they know that so much, but they know that we do follow strictly, and that makes a big impression on them. And the fact that we shave our heads and put tilak, that was a big thing.
Only that, yeah, but like everywhere in India, calendar art is everywhere. And ISKCON murtis and their way that if I'm quite honest, I'm much more into Radha Raman and traditional, but Indians love the standard of Shringar and Puja. So everywhere you go,
that was Prabhupada's program. Brilliant. He knew exactly. That would attract the Indians.
Yeah. So all over the deities in India and in the West, the Indians see that, and they go, this is better, because in London, it's, say, for instance, or England, if you would go to the local little Hindu temples, they would, the deities are there and they've got the same clothes on for the whole year. They don't even change them. Or in the old days, I don't know how they've come there.
And it's affected the whole of Hinduism and brought these standards up.
Yeah.
Not only Vaishnavas, but in Vrindavan, definitely the standard of deity worship, the superb deity worship in Vrindavan it's who was that? I think that was Srivatsa Goswami said, frankly, Prabhupada shamed us into improving our standards.
Yeah. I don't know. Did you ever come across a book by Angela Storr called I Am Not This Body? It's a sociological study on ISKCON in England. It was quite interesting. I'm about the only person I know who's read the book, but it's quite good. And I got it in Delhi after reading a review in the newspaper.
Just a second. I usually take milk at 7:30, which it is now. So I'll do that, but we can go on chatting as.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, go on. Angela Storr.
Well, she made this point that the reason that ISKCON became relevant in England for the Hindus was that they went through a whole, all those people that came from Uganda and everywhere, they were also, they're a couple of generations separated from India, but they're modern. They're kind of more modern. And then they all came to England, and they needed, the reason that ISKCON kind of became attractive was just at that time when we were expanding and George Harrison gave the manna and everything, they were growing economically, and ISKCON, they could relate to ISKCON because ISKCON was a kind of a fusion of East and West, and some, and so what, we had some kind of Western, and that's what they were dealing with, and that's why it's become quite relatable to expatriate Indians around the world, and why they become the big donors, because ISKCON makes more, it's kind of modern Hinduism. It's they didn't want to just do what their grandparents and their great grandparents did. They wanted something that was relevant for them.
Another thing I think is and that's more maybe for the South Indians, but for the modern born in England Hindus also, the fact that we can explain what we're doing, because that was a very big thing when I first came to India in the 70s and the 80s. People say, what is all these Hindu rituals? You're just doing it, mumbo jumbo. And I remember once in Andhra Pradesh, I asked someone, he was chanting all these mantras nicely, a young man. And I asked him at the end, what does that mean? He said, I don't know.
Yeah.
It was just rituals. But the fact that we can explain it, that was a big thing also, because all the time especially from Nehru, there was all this propaganda, Hinduism is useless and it's all just out of date. So it's a big thing. Do you remember the Illustrated Weekly of India? It was completely.
I used to. It was the first. Kami literature that I read after being a devotee was traveling with Chanarari and the library party and getting illustrated weekly. I never read
it was
any.
a very big, very influential at that
Yeah.
time. All the all the well-educated people read it. There weren't that many intellectual magazines in English. There weren't,
Yeah.
and the number of people educated means you speak English. So one time, there was on the front cover, there was a picture of Omkar. He was remember, head pujari at ISKCON Vrindavan. There's a photo of him standing in front of Krishna Balaram, and it had the headline was Saviors of Hinduism.
I think I even remember that copy.
Yeah, that was after Prabhupada left.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd like to return to the point that we
another thing I want to say about art,
okay.
while it's in my mind. You must have seen on the internet, ISKCON art is everywhere. And in Vrindavan, they have all these kathas now, and Govardhan, and they mostly use ISKCON art for their kathas. And the picture of Jadharani's picture of Nrsimhadev with blood everywhere, the punks and all, they love that.
Yes.
ISKCON art it's something, if we say ISKCON art, you know very well, there are different genres of ISKCON art also. It's not all the same. And Pushkar is very different from Jadharani, and the early Jadharani is very different to the later Jadharani, and so many things. But if we say as an umbrella term, ISKCON art, it's really something unique in the world. And we haven't really promoted it or whatever. I mean, it's really something fabulous, and really it's a fusion of East and West, and really something. There's a lot of really very, very, very good paintings which have come out. Yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to say that.
No, that's true. I wanted to go back because I know this. You're very kind of well researched in this field, and we kind of
say Goya Mat. I'm not.
Yeah, no, it's about.
It might seem like that to you because I know more than you.
Yeah. Okay, but the fact is that's why I'm interested. You know, it's like I've got my field of interest that I specialize in, and you've got your, you focus. I suppose it's the general what I'm interested to know your idea about is because we've been talking a lot about the institution. We've both joined the same institution. I've tried to explain kind of in a nutshell kind of what made me leave it and kind of go off of I'm interested to know that even though we kind of both realized that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was compelled to do what he had to do to set up an organization and a mission, knowing basically that it was almost destined to have inherent problems with it because the nature of institutions seems to have some kind of inherent problems built into them. And he saw them happening. You know, it's good to have timelines, isn't it? 1917 to 1937. You're really looking at 20 years of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati organizing the Gaudiya Math. It's only 20 years. It's a very short time. And it's incredible to know how that spread and it did its thing. But at the end of it, he saw the writing on the wall, and you know, according, you know, and there are very different opinions. I've also just found a paper online which is all about the original court case that happened between Kunja Bihari. It's there somewhere on the internet. You can look at it, actually what happened. And you know, because what
comes up in the court report is tip of the iceberg, and it's not going to be, you know, there's a lot of stuff going on
exactly
the side.
So I'm intrigued because I'm trying to get my head around it in terms, and I think for people to understand that what Prabhupada brought to the West, you know, it's just like that. What that package was that Prabhupada brought was based on a mutt, the organization that his guru had set up, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, which was something new. Now, I have a theory, and tell me if I'm wrong, because funnily enough, Vivekananda, they're also Dattas. He was Narendra Dutt.
They were Hatkola Dattas. They were the same family as Kedarnath Datta.
Exactly. Now,
Not just the same name, but they were
Yeah.
actually in this. They're not very closely, but they were related.
somebody told me that they actually knew each other. Bhaktisiddhanta, he was much younger. Somebody, I don't know if it's historically correct, but my you see, everything has to look at the context of time.
Not Vivekananda, but Bhaktivinoda, once he went to see Ramakrishna.
Yes,
And
but I heard. Yeah, go on. Tell me.
well, I recorded that in that book I made, Sri Bhaktisiddhanta Vaibhava.
Okay.
And
Now,
then, yeah, okay.
Well, I suppose it's just that. Okay, you're wearing saffron. Okay,
Yeah.
you're quite, which is a kind of a hallmark of the Gaudiya Math brahmachari sannyasi costume that Prabhupada took. But
Imitating
as we know,
the Ramakrishna mission.
yes,
You want to put it in
so
blunt
it's
terms.
basic. Well, no, not just it's basically. I think there was a bit of competition going on.
Oh, definitely there was.
Yeah. So basically, apart from the Ramanujas and the South Indian sannyasi thing and the Tree Dundee, isn't it interesting that Ramakrishna was meant to be illiterate and he wore white, and Gorkishore Das Babaji was illiterate and wore white. Neither of them had ashrams or had mutts. Both of their disciples ended up wearing saffron and creating mutts. And I'm intrigued that it was the flavor of the time. Bhaktivinoda Thakur was a member of the British establishment, the Indian and British establishment, implementing colonial law in his own country. You see, with William Dalrymple has just made a point in his book Anarchy, which I highly recommend you read, about the history about what happened, the East India Company and how it took over. His thing was,
I read that book by Shashi Tharoor.
Yeah, no, read William Dalrymple's, it's better, okay? But basically his point was, and made me think, was that without the collaboration of the Bhadralok, the British wouldn't have been able, the Bhadralok of the upper middle class.
Oh, yeah, definitely. But the British, they were far outnumbered. It was the Indians, they cooperated, yeah.
So if you're looking at our tradition, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, I think, was only one of two magistrates, Bengalis, working for the British on that level, maybe, or he was the first to. He
reached the ceiling.
Yeah.
By qualification, he could have gone higher, but no Indian could go higher.
Okay, so basically, he was part of the establishment, which was the British at that time. Okay, so his role.
Bishi Kishan in Orissa. He wanted to organize a rebellion against the British, and Bhaktivinoda had him arrested.
Yes, exactly.
Put him in prison.
So many people who are pro-India, they criticize Bhaktivinoda Thakur and see him as on the other side, whereas actually he's a radical. He was they would say he was a turncoat, critiques, you see. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur did that very political statement, really, even though it's visionary, of saying this is Yogpit. This is the birthplace of Mahaprabhu. That created a kind of division between the traditional Goswamis who were in Navadvip, and because if you go to Mayapur Navadvip, one side of the Ganga is all Gaudiya Math and ISKCON, and the other side is all Goswamis. It's a real kind of, and it made a big political statement, even though Bhaktivinoda Thakur was not really rocking the boat. He was coming in. He was the first stage of that, and then you get, and then in India. So
that was absolutely required. I discussed this in Bhaktisiddhanta Vaibhava, that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, especially, he took the revolutionary spirit much further. It was required to do what he had to do to extract Vaishnavism from the cesspool. I mean, Vivekananda expressed Vaishnavism as a sex religion. It becomes so mixed up with misconceptions and misbehavior. That's the history we get.
Well, it goes back a bit. Yeah, sorry.
But history is much more complex than that.
Yeah, because it starts earlier with Ram Mohan Roy, and it's all about the upper class.
Even there was, there were all different groups. There was Arya Samaj in North India. They were trying to revive, they were trying to show that Hinduism is noble. Well, the Brahma Samaj was somewhat different, actually. They were trying to make something in between Christianity and Hinduism, and it ended up more like Hinduism.
But what they were rejecting really in Hinduism was Vaishnavism. That's basically what they're predominantly in Bengal.
In Bengal,
it was,
and Ramakrishna Mission.
Yeah, because of Puranas. Okay, I'm just going to you could respond to me, because their main
Arya Samaj, definitely they were only the Vedas. Yeah.
Yes. Well, no, Brahma Samaj, they were,
but they didn't influence Bengal.
Who? Brahma Samaj.
Arya Samaj never influenced Bengal.
I suppose I'm focusing on Bengal a lot more. But they so, you know, pre-Bhaktivinoda Thakur, you had, you know, the Brahma Samaj, because I heard that even Bipin Bihari Goswami was actually also involved with Brahma Samaj.
Well, very much was involved. That other famous Advaita Sampradaya, what's his name?
With the Jattas.
Also begins with B. Yeah. Oh, I just can't remember his name now. Very big figure.
Somebody Goswami. What's his name? I know who you mean.
Beginning with B.
Yeah,
he was very much involved in the Brahma Samaj. Then he came out of it and went back to his Vaishnava roots.
Yeah, and he was
something Krishna Goswami. Something Krishna Goswami. Bijoy Krishna. Bijoy Krishna. Yeah. He was very, and then he.
I've got friends in Calcutta who. I've got friends in Calcutta who have followers of him. So there was all these different...
Well, when you say it's a rejection of Vaishnavism, again, you have to remember that Bengal religiously among the Hindus was divided between Shaktas and Vaishnavas. And it wasn't, and many Muslims were also inclined toward Vaishnavism also. I don't know if they were inclined towards Shaktaism. That would require some more. There is a lot of research going on, actually. From ISKCON devotees who've gone into academia. They're doing a lot of research, them and others, into this period.
Yeah.
You'd have to ask them. They would know much better than me. So, so the Ramakrishna Mission, it really, Vivekananda had a huge effect on India. People up to the present day, Vivekananda, he made a big impact in the West, which actually he didn't. It was, I mean, did you ever hear of Vivekananda? I hadn't.
Well, no.
No. But anyway, it's overstated. At least it got forgotten. It didn't have any lasting impact, it seems. Although they're on. But
it's a big story, isn't it?
You see, there are many people who didn't really want to go along with the Brahma Samaj. Many Vaishnavas went into the Brahma Samaj. Then they came out because they liked Vaishnava. But what was happening is there were many Vaishnavas from the Bhadra Lok also. And there was like the family, the Kanti Ghosh.
Tushar Kanti Ghosh, yeah.
Tushar Kanti Ghosh came later, and I'm dull-headed now. I can't remember his name. He was a friend of Bhaktivinoda Thakur.
Amar Bazar Patrika.
Amar Bazar Patrika, yeah, he made that. And there were many magazines in Bengali which were Vaishnava.
Yeah.
It wasn't only Bhaktivinoda who was from the Bhadra Lok who was promoting Vaishnavism.
Yeah,
there were others also. Yes. And so their natural inclination was toward Vaishnavism.
Yes.
So the Gauriya Math had to come out in an organized way and really clearly cut out all the flotsam or whatever.
It's also a different, the period of Bhaktivinoda Thakur please. He, you know, the First World War came in 1914 when he passed.
Yeah.
But you know, and that period up to there was the British Raj, were ruling the waves, and that was the kind of that was where the power base was in the society, and everybody who was part of the kind of the Indian British world. And then when Bhaktisiddhanta was growing up, he was assisting Bhaktivinoda Thakur with his printing press and all of these different things. And it's interesting because Lalit Prasad, the other brother Vaishnava, he really became more close with his father in the latter part part of his life, when Bhaktivinoda Thakur had retired a little bit more from the whole kind of printing presses and preaching. And not only that, the whole atmosphere in India of the Indians with the Quit India movement was, it was rocking the boat. That was the mood at that time, and Prabhupada had been involved with the Gandhi movement in his youth. And that was the big thing there. So it kind of, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati was like the man of the moment in terms of the link in the Sampradaya. It was the time to be quite discriminatory, to kind of like be, what's the word? Not aggressive, more.
He was revolutionary in so many ways, Bhaktisiddhanta. And one of the reasons, one way he was revolutionary was by being not politically revolutionary. That was another. He went against the grain.
Yes,
that's
true. What do you know? Because recently somebody just told me, and I read it somewhere, that there was actually, despite the Brahma Samaj being kind of anti, Rabindranath Tagore himself, he started to rebel a bit against his parents and the whole kind of Brahma Samaj, and he got influenced by the local Baul scenario.
Oh, very much. He promoted, he brought Bauls into intellectual respectability.
But wasn't there also, he actually had a communication with Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati?
Oh, yeah, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati met him.
Yeah, tell me about that.
Because Robbie Babu had just come back from the West.
Yeah.
He's got his Nobel Prize, and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati wants to send people to the West.
Exactly. Okay, I'm very interested in this.
And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati said, well, where do you think I should send people? Which is the best country to send them? And Robbie Tagore said, don't send them at all. Don't send them.
Did he?
He said, he said, don't send them. I can't remember exactly what he said. The time isn't right or something like that. And then Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati said, no, we got to do it. It's, the same kind of thing, that we can't wait for the time. It's so urgent. The message has to go. Mm-hmm. But then, he said, oh yeah, there are so many Indian gurus who've gone to the West. He was saying, Robbie Tagore saying at that time, who have given a bad name.
Yes.
And there weren't that many Indian gurus. I think he was talking about Yogananda, actually. He was he had some romantic side to him also.
Yeah. There was a scandal, that even is mentioned in the biography, the movie. He touches on it, So there's a very interesting book.
I didn't finish with the Robbie Tagore thing.
Yeah, please.
You'll be interested to hear it, so don't mind me cutting you out, even though I'm trying to speak and drink milk at the same time, which isn't very easy. So then Bhaktisiddhanta said, well, to England or Germany. They weren't even thinking of America at that time. This was in the mid-1930s. And remember, Germany was Nazi Germany, and shortly after this, they go to the war. But from the Indian side, they didn't have a bad opinion of Nazi Germany.
No,
they didn't.
Yeah, I
no,
know.
And many English people in Britain at that time also sympathized with Nazi Germany.
Yeah, I know.
And
including the Prince of Wales, who abdicated.
So that's another whole thing. But so Robbie Tagore, he said, don't go to England because there are rulers and they think that we're just meant for cleaning their shoes or something. They're not going to, we're their slaves. But he said in Germany, they have good respect for Indian culture, which is a fact. And that's another big story, how up to the present day, especially coming from the Anglosphere in the West and coming in India from the English educated people also, there's a constant besmirching of ancient Indian culture. Because I think what happened, now I'm getting off course again, but what happened, the British came to India and they saw something which was objectively speaking much older and philosophically deeper, and there's just some very deep culture which just they couldn't handle it because we're the British and we're superior. And they wanted
Yes.
to hammer that home. And then they just made fun of everything Indian and Mother India. There was a book written, you aware of that? By an
Yes.
American, actually, and saying how
Yeah.
bad everything in India is and so on. And
Yeah.
that's up to the present day. If you go to India, they say, oh, caste system,
Yeah.
sati. They still talk like that.
Yeah.
So,
So what did so he recommended go to Germany rather than England.
So then Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati wanted to send Bon Maharaj, who was a
Yeah.
fairly new devotee at the time, but he was
Very
Bon
good.
Maharaj. And Bon Maharaj said, no, better go to England, because attack where it's most difficult. And then if you can be successful, that will have its effect more.
Mhm.
So he went to England.
Okay, so
That's the story as it comes down.
Right. So okay, so then we got the.
And then Bon Maharaj did go to Germany also.
Yeah.
In pre-war Germany. It was the clouds of war were really gathering. And he spoke in university. He learned German so he could speak to them. He's a bright guy.
I just go back
I shouldn't
to
call him a guy.
and when Tagore came back from Europe and England and came back to Bengal, what was Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati kind of known to the Tagores, or did he have to?
Well, their whole family was, because Bhaktivinoda Thakur.
Oh yes, Dwijendranath, his elder brother.
Dwijendranath. Well, one thing is, when we're talking about the Bhadralok at that time, I don't think it was a very big demograph. The number of people that were getting educated in English, the first batches, it wasn't that many.
No.
So they probably all knew each other.
Yeah. It's true. Except that obviously they came from a bit more land.
Kanti Ghosh was he's still a famous name. He wrote Nimai Charit. He wrote in Bengali. It's a summary of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes, and it was that was published widely, and it's still you can still buy it. And then he wrote in English a summary called Lord Gauranga, which is still available.
I've read it. It's fantastic. I actually liked it. I actually thought it was brilliant. Actually, my friend Madan Mohan's got a copy. I thought it was really, really good. I thought it was a good introduction. It's not the final.
Yeah. So.
Okay, so we've got Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, and he's established the Gaudiya Math to do something. He's compelled. Yeah, he's on a mission to spread Gaudiya Vaishnavism around the world. But then he sees and he sets up an institution to do it. But obviously sees there's inevitable intrinsic flaws inherent in the whole idea of the institution. And then before
he never registered any society. Okay, he never made a legally notified will.
Okay.
He was a bit of an anarchist in that way.
Yeah.
And even when he built the buildings for the Sri Chaitanya Math, and in his mats, he deliberately made the brahmachari ashrams not very well constructed.
Right.
Because he thought that, well, if they don't have good buildings, then they'll have to go and collect to build it again. And if they have to go to collect, they have to go and preach. He didn't want them to become comfortable.
Right. Okay. I mean, do you have all the anecdotal evidence for all of those things, like letters and talks and things like that?
No, a lot of it is verbal. If you see my Bhaktisiddhanta Vaibhav, it's a big thing to read.
I should read it. I want to read it. How long did you take to write it?
Well, I wasn't working on it all the time, but from the beginning of the project to when it was published, it was about 24 years, which is...
My goodness.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. When was it published, the one on Bhakti? Because I've seen your book on Gorkishore and
Vamsidas.
Vamsidas.
When was it published? It must be more than 10 years, about 10 years ago, I guess now.
Okay, I should get a copy of it.
10 or 12 years.
What has inspired you to write those biographies yourself? What is the main?
Well, Bhaktisiddhanta, what happened? It must have been around 1917. Late 1970s, and I was moving in and out of Bangladesh and West Bengal, and we'd often stay in different Gaudiya Maths when we were traveling, in West Bengal especially, and at that time the Lilamrita interviews were going on, Material was being collected. And I thought that, well, they're going to write a biography of Srila Prabhupada, but there are still quite a few disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati on the planet. And why don't I just go and meet them and find out what I can from them? That was my idea, just to get a few interviews and publish them. And I thought I did have some freedom of movement because I was one of Prabhu Vishnu's pirates from Bangladesh. And when we came to India, we were on our own agenda, you know. And Prabhu Vishnu, he didn't keep a micro management thing on top of us. I mean, it was pretty difficult in those days anyway. So we had a lot of freedom to move around, and we had to. In Bangladesh, we were cut off from the world. So we had to use our own initiative and do what we had to do. And we'd go out for preaching whenever we wanted. We'd come back whenever we wanted. We'd make our own programs, everything. We were kids, but we had this responsibility thrust on us. So anyway, I thought, let me do that. So I did. And I traveled around and I met different disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta, and I found them out here and there. It's described in the book, actually. And then I in Cuttack, in Odisha, I met Jyoti Shekhar Prabhu, who told me so many things. And he had a copy of Saraswati Jayashree, which was a biographical work written in the life of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, which has been out of print for years. It's been reprinted since. And I got a photocopy of that. And then I had to translate that. And then it gradually grew, the book. The book grew, and it gradually grew. It took on a life of its own. And now there are many more things I could add in also, because there are more materials becoming available, but I don't know if I will, because for various reasons.
Well, second edition, third editions.
It would be another big job to update it, and research is still going on, which I'm not doing. Like I said, we have our ISKCON.
Okay.
I might just leave it as it is, considering what a huge job it is to update it, and it can be what it is. I'm thinking like that now. But I got that Saraswati Jayashree, and then the writings of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati were available in Bengali, but I didn't want to get into it because it's so difficult to read. I mean, I can read Bengali by that time and understand, but his writing, you bring it to an educated Bengali today, and they you know, in the Gaudiya Math, if people read books, they read Prabhupada's books in Bengal. People can understand them. They can't. Bhaktisiddhanta's English, Bengali is very difficult to understand. So, so anyway, what happened? One Russian Gaudiya Math sannyasi, who's not a sannyasi anymore, and he's not in Gaudiya Math, but he's learned Bengali. He's very, very bright, very intelligent. He told me, because he had picked up so many stories, I was asking him. He said, "Look, you have to read the original writings." And it was a big mental block for me. But then I did. I put my mind in it, and then I was able to, I think if I went back to it now, I'd be still, I haven't been reading his stuff for some time. It's tough, but once you get into it, it carries you to another dimension. It's his way of writing and his clarity, his concepts, his use of words. It's mind-boggling. I don't know how to describe it.
So that was all you through your own, you didn't have somebody translating his work for you. That was you.
I did have little bits and pieces. Sometimes I'd ask Banu Swami to help me with bits and pieces sometimes, but a lot of it I did myself. I'll go on for maybe maximum half an hour more, and then maybe I think we're going to have another session, because
that's
lots of interesting stuff coming up.
Yeah, it's cool. I'm enjoying it. It's great fun. I mean, I love communicating with my God brothers or devotees or anybody, but specifically people who I have I value, you know, for whatever reason.
Thanks a lot.
And, you know, and like you, I can literally talk to the cows go home about everything, life, philosophy, psychology. It can go off and have to kind of like, I'm a bit of a history person as well. I'm a bit obsessed. I watch lots of documentaries, not less reading than I used to. And just trying to, philosophy. I'm very lucky here. I've got, you don't know him, but Madan Mohan, you should check out his page. Madan, he's done the whole Bhagavad Gita in heroic couplets, in rhyming couplets. It's incredible. He's a genius.
It's a what page? Facebook page or what?
I'll
Web
send you the
page.
link. I'll send you a
Okay.
link afterwards, But he's just local. He's just in Shepton Mallet down the road. And then I have Jagannath Mishra, who, was a disciple of Gaur Govinda Maharaj and spent years in Orissa. And so we have regular satsangs.
Oh, I think I saw him once. He spoke very, very good Oriya. Bus.
Yeah. But
Speaks very good
Madan,
Oriya. I was very impressed by him. I saw him once. I was in Bhubaneswar. Anyway, that's another whole story.
yeah, well, he's local. And the other person is Madan Mohan. And Madan was called Murari when he was in ISKCON. And then he got an initiation, Madan Mohan, from Bhagavat Maharaj, from the Gaudiya Mutt, the Bhag Bazar Gaudiya Mutt.
Bhag Bazar, yeah.
So
Prabhupada, Bhaktistan's Saraswati's disciple, Bhagavat Maharaj. That was quite a few years ago. He passed away quite a long time ago.
Yeah, he only came to England once for 1 month, and it was just at the time when Madan left ISKCON and went to their mutt, and then he kind of got. Anyway, that's where he got the name Madan Mohan from. But from there, he's. I'm very blessed to have him nearby, and so we discuss deeply all of these things. He's incredibly deeply involved in Bhagavat, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Sanskrit. He can read Sanskrit, and his Bengali singing and pronunciation is mind-boggling. Absolutely.
He spent time in Bengal, did he?
Yeah. It's a long story. We all met up on the banks of the Ganga, guess with who? Mr. Controversial Gadadhar Pran, basically, in Mayapur. They both kind of, it's a long story. I don't want to get into that here in our talk, but that's where I met them. And now they're all they both do their own thing, but we're all nearby. Ranchaw's in Glastonbury. I was in Glastonbury. And then nearby Glastonbury, you have Shepton Mallet. And then you have here Froome. I'll tell you one thing about Froome, where I live. Sir Charles Wilkins, who did the first English Bhagavad Gita in 1785, was from here, Froome in Somerset. So that's the claim to fame for Froome in its India connection.
Very English, Shepton Mallet.
Yes.
Very English sounding, huh?
But it actually, it's Shepton Mallet. It's actually coming from Norman times. There's a bit of French coming from there, You have to go back into English, Anglo-Saxon. Oh. Anyway, let's not go off on that detour. I want you to know more because I'm very fascinated because you've gone deeply into, you were just talking before the break about you going into the, because I asked you about the Bhakti Siddhanta, the book you've written on him, how long it took you, and you went through a process.
I don't think there are any hard copies left, actually. The Kindle version is there.
Okay. How does that book differ from, say, Rupa Vilas's version?
Oh, it's very right. Okay. Rupa Vilas, he didn't do any original research. And it's much, much smaller. My book's much, much bigger.
Okay. I really want to read your book now. Is there not a PDF I can get hold of or something?
No, I don't think so. I think someone made a pirate copy of somewhere of an incomplete version before it was
published. Well, if you hear about one floating around.
Well, you can just Google it.
And then what?
Well, I don't know. I'm not very expert on the internet, but if you Google it, you should probably find it.
Oh, okay. I'd love to read it. It sounds like you've got.
It's a big book. I mean, it's how many? It's almost 2,000 pages or something. I think 3 volumes.
Do you identify strongly with Bhakti? Okay, you've got devotees like who's just passed, Nrsimha, Jagat Guru, and Tripurari, who went to Sridhar Maharaj. And I know Nrsimha Swami specifically was quite, more of a kind of Gaudiya Math Bhakti Siddhanta man in a sense than, say, Prabhupada. His emphasis, I would say the level of importance he would give would be, Anyway, I don't want to get too much into that, but I would say your view, I'm intrigued about how you've been.
Well, I write that. I think I opened my, I think that's the very beginning of the book, that I opened that from my very first days in Krishna consciousness. I was intrigued by the personality of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati in Berry Place. You maybe don't remember because you didn't spend much time in Berry Place.
Yeah. I visited.
They had the pictures of the acharyas. He was looking down on us with that very stern, serious look. So from the very beginning, I was intrigued, and then I went to Bengal, and then I was always intrigued. I was always fascinated by his personality.
Okay.
But one thing I also write in that Bhaktisiddhanta book, and he himself said it, Bhaktisiddhanta is made of Bhakti Vinod. The whole Gauriya Math is based on Bhakti Vinod. Yeah. The songs and everything. And the Bhakti Vinod songs, he wrote so many songs, and that's really... Do you know why I learned Bengali first? Of course you don't know. I first learned Bengali not for preaching. Because I was in Calcutta. We were out traveling in West Bengal with Roshik Da was on our traveling party under Ananda Sarup, if you remember him.
Yeah, he's still there.
Nistula was on our party. Who he lived and died in Bangladesh.
Yes, I know.
And who else was on our party? And there was Tatpo, who later became a Swami, Bengali. So there are a few. So we were in Calcutta. We were in and out of Calcutta. One time I was in Calcutta, Tulsi Arati, after Mangal Arati, and we were singing the song. And I was thinking, this is such a beautiful song. And I realized, because we'd had a little smattering of Bengali from being out and trying to sell books, I never really tried to learn it, and hearing people all around you talking Bengali all the time. So then I was singing the Tulsi, I realized I can understand every word. And there's so many beautiful songs. I should learn Bengali. I first of all wanted to learn Bengali so that I could have access to the songs, especially. And I'm really, really glad I did. And when I went to Bangladesh, there was a great opportunity for learning, because it's just like a child. You go in the village, no one speaks any English. You want to communicate. You want to go and pass stool in the field. It's not just any field anywhere. You have to. You want to communicate, it has to be in Bengali. And people are telling me, so that's how I learned Bengali, out in the field. So that's how I learned Bengali. And that was very helpful for me, obviously, in my research on Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati and everything. But really the songs of Bhaktivinoda and other songs, they're like, it's a dimension of Krishna consciousness which most people don't have. I'm very sorry that many Bengalis don't really access it either. But it's something which it's waiting to be discovered. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati said that the day will come when people of the world will learn Bengali to read Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's translated in English now, so it's not needed. It's still needed because it's a different flavor.
Absolutely.
Do you speak any language other than English?
I have to say, Kichu Bangalajana, it's very, very small.
Okay, but if you know another language, especially one which is different enough, there's a whole mood and culture and flavor that comes with it.
Yes.
And every language has its own flavor, and Bengali is khub mishti, and it's just suitable for Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's culture. It's just suitable.
Yeah.
And even Hindi has a very different sound to it and a very different feel to it.
Absolutely.
So
where you are now, you're near Chennai.
I'm Chennai, yeah.
Yeah. So
but if I was younger, I'd like to learn Tamil and Telugu, because they're also very rich cultures and languages, but how many things can you do in life?
And do you spend most of your time there at this specific place, or do you move around?
Well, most of my life I've been moving around. Last year I was mostly in Tamil Nadu. I was locked down is one reason, and another reason, for health reasons, I couldn't move around.
Right.
And I'm in South India. I always spend the winter in South India because it's warmer, and for me the cold is very bad for my health, which is why I went to India in the first place, to get out of the miserable British weather, which was very bad for my health.
Right. So how many years now have you spent in the Indian subcontinent?
Well, let's see. I left England with the idea of going and staying in India on the 22nd of August, 1977, which that year that'll bring it up to what, 44 years.
Wow.
But in the meantime, yeah, well, I include Bangladesh as India because it's culturally
Absolutely.
the same. But then from about 1980 to 89, I also spent considerable time in Thailand and Malaysia, and time to time going to Burma also, on and off. So I was, in that decade almost, I was in these countries which are very much influenced culturally by India, but not India per se. Yeah. And then the rest of the time I've been based in India, although I do travel outside.
The video I mentioned I'd seen from some of your students, that community, is that
Which
outside?
One? Oh, Kurmagram. That's in North Andhra Pradesh.
Oh,
North Andhra Pradesh.
How many projects are you kind of like are under you?
These village projects, well, I'm not really, in one sense, I'm overseeing them. Yeah. But in another sense, I don't get involved in the management, and they consult me about things and this and that, but I'm really saying, look, it's your baby. I can give you some ideas and advice, but it's experimental. We're experimenting with people's lives. They're voluntarily going into it.
Yeah.
But it's social engineering, if you like. Mm-hmm. But we have one project which has been going on for almost, I think, about 10 years in Gujarat now. Right. And then that Kurmagram is fairly new, but all signs are there that it's good. And we have other projects which didn't really happen. One in Karnataka, just getting started, and then it all got flooded. And that was the end of that project. I mean, severely flooded, and devotees almost died. And that was the end of that project. It had been going on less than a year. The land is still there, but we're not there. There's another one outside Hyderabad, which never really got off the ground due to human factors. I've given many talks about this, and I often say that growing the food, that's not the difficult part. People think farming is very difficult, but you know what? All over the world, if you want to talk about someone who's not very smart, they call him a farmer, right? It's not rocket science. You put the thing in the ground. Of course, there is a lot to be learned, but basically anyone can do. Cultivating crops, that's not the difficult thing. It's bringing people together and getting them to cooperate, and that is the hardest part. So in the one outside Hyderabad, that has been plagued with difficulties, and practically the one in Kurmagram in northeast Andhra Pradesh, that's been moved there. One main reason is just to get away from that whole one near to Hyderabad and just set up and start again, make a new start. And there are other reasons also. And there is a project which was just beginning in Punjab, but it didn't get off the ground because coronavirus hit. Right now, it's a brahmachari ashram with brahmacharis living, and there's some land. Families are supposed to join, but they haven't joined because everything got put in abeyance by corona. They do have a small Gurukul. We also have a Gurukul in Salem, which is a town in South India. We have a huge temple project coming up. It's made of stone, the old traditional style, like that. So that's...
So the mostly South India.
And also in Czech Republic. Some of the disciples of mine and others, they're running a farm. It's more difficult in the West in many ways. And the human factor is also more difficult because for whatever
Has
reason.
and the way, okay, what I'm intrigued is that I don't really, I have to say, I know little about what you've been doing, but I get information, you know, that you've made certain waves in certain aspects of the kind of like the bigger ISKCON community. But
Yeah.
maybe on the next talk we can get more. But what I'm very fascinated about is the fact that you actually said it. Some of my disciples. You have disciples, right? So when did you start accepting disciples?
It must have been fairly soon after I took sannyas, maybe a year or two after. I took sannyas in 1989. I was actually recommended for taking sannyas in 1986. At that time, I was cleared. I would have been 29 years old. I was 29 years old. I didn't want to do it because, you know what? It was a very poisonous atmosphere in ISKCON at the time.
Yeah.
And that was the year of the major guru fall downs. And I just
Yeah.
didn't feel it was the right time to take sannyas. But
Yeah.
then I eventually took in 1989. I thought things have settled down now.
Right.
Yeah, the volcano wasn't as active as it was previously. It's still right. So I took in 89, and probably within a year or two, what happened, there was one devotee in Malaysia kept on pushing me. I want you to be my guru. And I wasn't even thinking. Prabhu Vishnu Swami wanted me to be a guru right from the beginning when they opened it up, because he was made a guru when it was all opened up. That was about 1988 or something, 1989. And I really didn't want to. He was really pushing me. You come to Australia. I don't want to be the only one initiating. And I didn't want to do it. But then this devotee pushed me into it. And then gradually a few more came. And now, to tell you the truth, I'm quite at home with it, shamelessly or whatever. It's just, it's what I do. That's my role.
I think, when was it that you actually, the way that you said that with kind of acceptance of yourself, of who you are, I think that's wonderful, is when did that realize?
Who I am, it's not just about who I am, but other people make me who I am. I didn't ask them.
Well, I
didn't start to make disciples. People
well,
came
there
to
you go. But that's very interesting, the fact that you say that. The fact is that you you are who you are due to various factors have contributed into molding you into who you are. And it seems that, you know, the Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, his personality and his teaching has obviously had a deep effect on you. And the route that you have taken, and that makes you kind of like, the fact that, I mean, Sarva Bhavana has got a similar story, you know. He's got devotees in Europe who came up to him, because I traveled, and they didn't want to go with Narayan Maharaj followers or this people, and they liked him. And so they pressurized him, and that's how he's ended up with disciples. That's his route.
Good for him.
He's very low-key, and he's working out his own way. So what I'm interested is your way.
My old friend Sarva Bhavana.
Well, it's like how you've managed to exist.
I don't know. I don't really sit down and talk out my life. Things.
No, but I'm asking you. It's me. I'm the one that's interested. You may not want to do it on your own accord, but do you mind if I ask you these? What I'm interested is if just even in a nutshell.
I'm looking at my watch. Yeah.
Sorry. How much time have we got left?
Well, I'll finish fairly soon, because it's usually I start.
Maybe if you could wind up in a nutshell.
Okay, but I'll tell you in a nutshell. But we should speak some more. And you're going to be, you know, we'll have to have some gentle music in the background. It's like bringing out the things I never thought about, and my inner, what do they call that? I often laugh to myself and make little jokes to myself, which I don't tell anyone, but I was thinking some kind of Python-esque kind of jokes, getting in touch with my inner hedgehog. Instead of my inner baby, it's more like a hedgehog. It's all prickly. So bringing out, yes, and do you remember in your childhood? Oh, yes, I remember
I mean, I am very intrigued Because basically not many really people know who you are.
Well, maybe I don't either.
Well, maybe you need someone like me to kind of
yeah,
like
maybe you do. But
ask
you know,
questions.
I identify myself as an aspiring servant of Srila Prabhupada, and I'm
Yes.
very much, I guess I should say, maybe sentimental. I'm very much attracted to Gauranga also,
Yes.
very
Yes.
much. And the
Yes.
Chaitanya Charitamrita and the Gaur Leela and the
Yeah.
songs and everything. So
Right.
I instead of thinking about myself, who am I like to think of myself in terms of my service to Prabhupada
Yes.
and
Yeah.
aspirations. Bhaktivinoda has already given us the aspirations. Kobe Gauravane Sura Duni Tate Ha Radhe Ha Krishna. Then what is that other song? Gurudev Tava Kobe Tava Karuna Prakasha. Your friend Madan Mohan probably knows all these songs. Shri Gauranga Lila Hoinit Tatatta A Jira Bishase. Then what is it? Gauranga Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Srivat Panchajan. He's visualizing. I'll see the Panchatattva dancing in the roads of Nadia, and so that's
where your heart is.
I'd like to. I'd really like to. Yeah, I'd really like to join. And Bhaktivinoda also, Preme Dala Dala Shonara Anga Charane Nupura Baje. His Chaitanya, he's dancing and his whole body is shimmering in ecstasy, shaking in ecstasy as he's dancing, and his Nupur, his ankle bells are jingling. I'd like to see once, even after many millions of lifetimes.
Oh, that's lovely.
I was thinking, it's better to be born as a bird in Navadvip Dham than a big pundit in Varanasi. So if you're a bird in Navadvip Dham at the time of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, or if you have the vision, we can see now, because what is that? Adhuna Kono Kono Bhagyavani Deke Bare Pai. Adapi Ho Jailila Kore Gorarai Kono Kono Bhagya. Even now, people have got the eyes, they can still see Mahaprabhu's pastimes going on. So if you're a bird, all the people, they're locked out of Srivasi's house, right? If you're a bird, you can go and look. So better be a bird in Navadvip Dham. You can have darshan of him dancing. This is...
That's your heart. This is where your
I'd
heart.
really want to. But you know, I all the part, Rama, I'd love to see Ram Leela, Vamana Leela. Vishwanath Chakravarti says we should be just fixed, one-pointed only, but I don't know. I'm attracted to all the different Leelas. All of them. Yeah. And that,
well, that's the essence of your spiritual heart.
Well, I'm really, ISKCON is what it is, and there are pros and cons, and it's tough to relate to it in many ways, but it doesn't matter in some ways. It does matter because people's lives are getting affected by it, but in other sense, we can't really do that much about it, and Krishna's there, and the holy name's there, and we have to connect with that. At the end of life, we have to remember Krishna, and in life also. So that's, I don't really try to psychologically work myself out, but my aspirations, that's what I'm aiming at. That's how if I think about who I am, it's someone I want to be there. If I really think who I am, that's what I want. You see, it's
lovely.
It's apana bhajana kata nabale ho jata tata. We're not supposed to talk here and there, all the things. Narottam Das famously said that. Apana bhajana kata nabale ho jata tata. I want my own internal bhajan. I shouldn't speak here and there. That comes at the end of the Prem Bhakti Chandrika, where he's laid it all out. in Pratana and Prem Bhakti Chandrika, he's laid it all out, all his aspirations. But then at the end, he writes, we shouldn't broadcast it here and there. So in one sense he does, in another sense it's not really meant for everyone.
No.
But the Prem Bhakti, it's all over Bengal. It's it's very famous.
I think maybe we should end this talk on that note. But on what I'm intrigued, maybe if you're up for it on the next, I'm intrigued to know from that internal connection to Gauranga and the aspirations of Krishna consciousness. What I'm interested in is how that's, I suppose, the manifestation from who you are and the projects and how your just your views and obviously disciples and students are attracted to you because you have a certain angle and you represent something to them that connects them with Krishna, not just on the internal, but the way your methodology, your way of being, the way that you are, because all the leaders and teachers and people, I mean, you are so different to Radhanath and from Gopal Krishna and Jai Pataka or whoever.
Everyone's different. We're all individuals.
So I'm interested to know about that aspect as well, about how, because I think in terms of what I've known about you from hearing things, is all people really know about you is that you've got strong opinions about certain things, you say.
Yeah, I give a few talks here and there, and it's maybe maximum less than 1 in 20 of the talks I give. I've got a few thousand talks out on the internet, but the ones which get all the big hits are the ones about controversial topics. I've been giving a series of lectures on Vishnu Sahasranama, which is just pure Krishna Katha.
Right.
It's all about the qualities of Krishna, and that gets the lowest hits of all. And if I talk about this problem in ISKCON and that problem in ISKCON, that gets lots of hits. That's in itself that's not very healthy, is it?
It's not a question of healthy, but what it is indicative of where things are at in the greater Krishna. That's kind of what I'm a kind of into history, sociology, and the fact that I just saw the president talking, the new president, and his whole talk yesterday was about unification, unity, and bringing. And you're shaking your head. So
he's dreaming. He's dreaming.
I know he's dreaming. So my question is okay? It's like
let's put it off. Let's leave it now.
Yeah, we'll leave those to the next talks. We'll leave those to other talks. But those are the kind of things that I want to also explore.
Okay, all right.
Because it's connected with Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati.
Okay.
The Gaudiya and ISKCON and the institution and the Hare Krishna Institute.
I tell you what, I have a series of talks lined up, and I've given a lot of talks on institutional issues in ISKCON. I just gave a talk about 2 or 3 days ago called "Has Kali Yuga Entered ISKCON?" That was the title. And I do plan to give a series of talks coming up. I can do it in the next few days, probably. One is about institutions and institutionalism. There's one talk with reference to ISKCON. And, you'll have Weber and Durkheim and all these, Eric Fromm and all this, the bits and pieces of them, for sure. And there are a few talks like that. And then I wanted to give a talk about rubber stamp gurus.
Okay.
And then
no, these are all interesting. These are
maybe you should listen to. Maybe I should give those talks.
Yeah, ask Rishikesh or to send me links to these talks. I'm interested. Then I
have to give them first of all, and I have to be in the mood for them. But I can do it in the next few days. I was planning to do that anyway.
But also, I think that just the fact that there's a specific dynamic between you and me being God brothers, and I've got I'm intrigued. I'd like to have the background, but it'd be nice to have something with which I got something ground to ask you questions about. So I know a little more about your ideas, because I don't know what they are. I've only heard secondhand people saying this and this and this and this, but I don't really know what it is that you.
I have a pretty bad press,
Right. Well, you should check out my one. I mean, I haven't even touched on what's gone on in my life since I've gone on the zigzag path.
Yeah.
Russia, gulags. You don't even know about that part of my.
Okay. All right.
Okay. It's been absolutely incredible.
Yeah, great. Untitled Chapter.
It's been wonderful. It's been an honor, and thank you so much. And Haribo, we'll catch up soon, and good luck with everything. And thank you so much for the time, giving your time.
Good luck to you also.
Thank you.
You have to hug
Haribo.
3 times, right? Once on the one shoulder. Hare Krishna. Okay.
Take care. Haribo.
Haribo.